Thank you. Thanks very much for the introduction. Thank you for coming tonight, on a hot night in the city. We are both, Jill and I are each going to read very briefly from the book, and then I think as you heard, we'll take some questions. I'm going to leave until the Q&A part of the evening the background of the story behind the story, how this book came to be written, how we came to collaborate on it. And I will just say, before I read my few pages, that this character, Morgan Prager, is around 30, and she's studying criminology, victimology for a graduate degree. And she, part of her job requires her to interview people who are being held at Rikers, and that's the section I'll read in just a moment. But I just want to read one paragraph separate from that section, because the research we did was really, really interesting and yielded some nuggets, including this one of my favorites in the book. This is a discovery made by the forensic psychologist Adrian Raine. He found that psychopaths shared one biological factor, a low pulse rate. The significance of this discovery is that increasing levels of risk are necessary to create a heightened feeling of excitement. Dr. Raine also found that successful psychopaths, the ones who elude capture, are able to increase their pulse rate enough to make them careful. Less successful are the psychopaths who do not experience a significant rise in pulse rate. Their attempts to feel excitement become increasingly reckless until they're caught. Okay. My patients were guys hoping that by seeing a shrink, the trial judge would look on them favorably. Since most of the Rikers population, 14,000 on an average day, was awaiting trial, everyone there was innocent. We sped over the unmarked Francis Bueno Bridge from Queens, the only access to the island. In the orientation session, we'd learned that Rikers Island had been a military training ground during the Civil War. It became a jail in 1932. In 1957, Northeast Airlines Flight 823 crashed onto the island shortly after takeoff from LaGuardia Airport, killing 20 and injuring 78 out of a total of 95 passengers and 6 crew. Shortly after the crash, department personnel and inmates alike ran to the crash site to help survivors. As a result of their actions, of the 57 inmates who assisted with the rescue effort, 30 were released and 16 received a reduction of 6 months by the New York City Parole Board. We also learned that a drawing by Salvador Dali, done as an apology because he was unable to attend a talk about art for the prisoners, hung in the inmate dining room from 65 to 81 when it was moved to the prison lobby for safekeeping, where the drawing was stolen in 2003 by some guards and replaced with a fake. The facility was something of a small town. There were schools, medical clinics, ball fields, chapels, gyms, drug rehab programs, barber shops, a laundromat, a power plant, a tailor shop, a bus depot, even a car wash, the world's largest penal colony. I saw my patients in a small annex off an overcrowded ward where the fluorescent lights were on 24/7. A TV played from 7 a.m. to midnight. The men were dressed in orange jumpsuits and looked as if they'd been living in a Greyhound bus terminal waiting for a bus that never came. After I was ID'd, searched, and cleared, I walked the maze of hallways with bars over the windows and doors that only the guards could open. My first patient was a skinny white guy with a buzz cut and a cauliflower ear, sentenced to 9 months for exposing himself at the Metropolitan Museum in the Greek sculpture wing. He'd stationed himself at the end of a line of marble nudes and waited for schoolgirls on a field trip. He showed no remorse, contended that he was innocent, that his fly was open without his knowledge. He always started our sessions with a joke to try to rattle or charm me. I couldn't always tell which. It was more than that. He only responded to my questions with jokes. "Prisoner," he began, "look here, doctor, you've already removed my spleen, tonsils, adenoids, and one of my kidneys. I only came to see if you could get me out of this place." "Doctor, I am, bit by bit." "Are you asking me to get you out of this place?" I asked. "A man escapes from a prison, finds a house, and breaks into it looking for money, but only finds a young couple in bed. He orders the guy out of bed and ties him up in a chair. While tying the girl up to the bed, he gets on top of her, kisses her on the neck, then goes to the bathroom. While he's in there, the husband tells his wife, 'Listen, this guy is an escaped prisoner. He probably hasn't seen a woman in years. I saw how he kissed your neck. If he wants sex, don't resist, don't complain, just do what he tells you. If he gets angry, he'll kill us. Honey, be strong. I love you.' He was not kissing my neck," the wife said. "He was whispering in my ear. He told me he was gay, thought you were cute, and asked if he kept any Vaseline in the bathroom." "Are you frightened of being raped in here?" A psychiatrist makes his rounds in the mental hospital one morning. "How are you feeling today?" he asks the first patient. The patient is naked, his penis is erect, and he is dropping peanuts on it. He turns to the shrink and says, "I am fucking nuts. I'm going to be here for a while." "Are you accepting the fact that you're going to be here for a while?" "You know, Doc, I think I'm allergic to your face." "We're stopping early today," I said, signaling through the reinforced window in the door for the guard to relieve me. I remained on the folding chair, reminding myself why I agreed to do this work. If only Bennett had been as obvious as this exhibitionist joker. How many sociopaths does it take to change a light bulb? One. He holds the bulb while the world revolves around him.
Thank you all for coming. I take my glasses off while Amy puts hers on. Okay, what you need to know for this is that Morgan, our main character, found her fiancé mauled to death in her apartment about 3 months before this scene, and her dogs were covered in blood. And she learns that Bennett had an ex-wife, and this scene is her going to Sag Harbor to meet the ex-wife. I recognized her before I stepped off the jeepney because she said she would have her dog with her. Sitting at attention beside her was a sleek and powerful-looking Rottweiler. She held the leash with both hands and said, "Audie needs to know a person before you can touch her." Far from a welcome, this woman had brought backup. We walked from the jeepney and headed slowly up Main Street, away from the wharf. She said, "I thought we might take Audie over to Havens Beach. It's about a 15-minute walk." We fell into an easy pace. Everything I thought to ask or say was too lame to utter, and the news I planned to deliver was the kind of news for which the time is never right. Still, I thought I would wait until we were on the beach. It came out in a rush. I told her that her ex-husband was dead. "We were never married," she said. The moment she said that, Audie was at her side, fixing me with her gaze. Though Pat had not spoken loudly, the dog had picked up her distress and stood ready. I told her the circumstances of his death. I told her that I had been engaged to him at the time. I told her that I was not the only one engaged to him at the time, and that another fiancé had been murdered, possibly by Pat's former lover. So much for easing her into it. "He never liked dogs, and dogs never liked him," Pat said. She seemed remarkably composed, though her dog grew agitated, reacting to what I assumed were her true feelings. Pat picked up a piece of sea glass from the sand and examined it. She said, "Only 2 fiancés? This doesn't surprise you," I said. "But murder is a new one," Pat said. "The police think he did it," I said. "And you don't?" "I don't know what to think." "I know I'm not reacting the way you might have expected," Pat said, "but this man put me through it." "How long were you with him?" I asked. "Long enough for him to derail my life," she said. "You?" I got off easy, relatively. I didn't want to one-up her in any way. I wanted her to tell me what he had done to her. I was teaching an extension studio course out here, interviewing students during registration, when this cocky kid in tight jeans and a white t-shirt asked the department secretary if there was any room in my class. I was busy with another student. The kid, he looked about 21, couldn't or wouldn't wait until I was free. When I turned to leave, I whispered to the secretary, "There's always room in my class for him." I whispered, but the acoustics of the room were such that he heard me. I saw him stop. I had 12 years on him, but he was the one who pursued me. I was painting then, looking for a gallery. He claimed great enthusiasm for my work and talked about an opening a gallery someday. There was no biological clock ticking, but my gallery clock was ticking. You know the old joke about the Holland Tunnel, how it was built? They gave New Jersey artists teaspoons and said the first one to dig to Manhattan gets a gallery. It took years for me to see what he had seen in me, an opportunity. He didn't have money, she went on. He had charm, and he charmed me out of everything I cared about. We were walking in step along hard-packed sand, taking turns throwing a stick for Audie to retrieve. The irony, Pat said, was that I taught him everything he knew about art without even knowing I was doing it. And when he knew enough to realize the value of my grandfather's paintings, he stole the only 2 canvases of his that I had, his going-away present to himself. I was hurt that he didn't steal my work. He caused a lot of us a lot of hurt, I offered. How many are we talking about here? Including myself, 4 that I know about, I said. That's concurrent, not consecutive. Pat asked if I'd like to see her studio. We walked another 20 minutes before she indicated that we turn onto a narrow dirt drive through the woods. The path hadn't been cleared of storm damage, and we had to climb over broken limbs. The studio was a weathered silver cedar barn about the size of a 3-car garage with an old sliding door. She threw her weight into the push, then slapped the wall where the switch was, and fluorescent light filled the space. It was much larger than it looked from outside. I had expected generic seascapes and was surprised by life-size nude photographs of her posed with a bloody heart held against her left breast. "Don't worry, it's a pig's heart," Pat said. Was I worried? I was now. In the photos, she looked about 10 years younger than the woman standing next to me. Pat preempted whatever I might have thought to say with a single word: subtle. I did these right after he left. I got them out after you called last night. She made us green tea and then gave Audie an enormous smoked femur to chew on. I was incredulous that Pat didn't see the horror of this after what I had told her about Bennett's death. The sound of tooth on bone was unnerving. As if on cue, there was a noise outside, a sound like the snapping of branches underfoot. Audie raced to the window and set to barking and snarling. With the lights on in the studio and the sun gone down, neither Pat nor I could see outside. Audie lunged at the glass and I feared it would break. I was close to panicking, yet Pat remained oddly oblivious. Staring at her younger self, she said, "I know his real name." "Who was he?" I asked. It cost me $5,000 to find out. I expected her to go on, but when she didn't, I wondered if she was expecting payment for passing on this information to me. I hired a PI to track down my grandfather's paintings. He discovered that they'd been auctioned in Qatar for a little over $1 million. He said the seller was anonymous, but he was able to determine that the seller was from Maine. You said you know his name. I know the name he started out with. Jimmy Gordon. The PI never found the paintings, but he got me an address for Jimmy's mother. What was she like? I asked. I never contacted the woman. Why would I want her in my life? Would you mind if I contacted her? Ask her where my grandfather's paintings are. I carried our empty mugs over to the slop sink in a corner of the studio. I asked if I could use the bathroom before I left. The studio doesn't have one. I just go in the woods. I thanked her for the tea and for taking the time to meet me. Pat slid the door open barely enough for me to squeeze through, and I closed it the moment I was outside. There was only a quarter moon and no other lights in sight. Only 10 steps, but I had already veered from the narrow path. I felt for a Kleenex in my tote bag and squatted. I relieved myself, terrified of poison ivy, ticks, snakes, wolf spiders, and coyotes. I hitched up my pants. I could hear Audie going ballistic inside the studio. I hoped it was inside. I headed for what I hoped would be the way out. A branch scratched my cheek enough to draw blood. I twisted my ankle. I moved through a spiderweb face first, all in darkness. I had to talk myself down from panic. I strained to hear the sound of traffic. All I heard was barking. A cloud cover obscured the stars. Not that I would have been able to navigate by them. I found my cell phone and tried to get a signal, but there was no service. Why hadn't I downloaded the flashlight app? My coat was not adequate against the damp cold, and it hit me. Find the shore and you'll know where to go. I tried to detect any scent other than the pine that surrounded me. Either it was an olfactory hallucination, or I really did pick up the faintest whiff of the sea. I moved cautiously in that direction, but after a couple of minutes I lost the scent and my short-lived confidence. I heard a sound like the one I had heard in the studio, a branch snapping underfoot, and my last of my composure left me. I moved as quickly as I could away from the sound, which wasn't quick enough. I heard it again and said out loud, "Really?" This was the staple of countless horror films. A woman alone flees an unknown predator in the dark woods. In an instant, as though reading it on the page, I recovered a quote by Helen Keller. "Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. The fearful are caught as often as the bold." I mean, if walking through your life blind and deaf doesn't teach you about fear, nothing will. My heartbeat slowed. I took a deep breath, and I continued in the direction of what might be the sea. On the heels of Helen Keller, something Celia told me came to my mind. Curiosity conquers fear even more than bravery does. As I felt my way through the dark, I asked the question that had guided me so far. The question wasn't whether or not Bennett was capable of murder. The question was how had I been capable of loving him? I smelled the sea. What's more, I saw a lighter horizon and remembered that a body of water always reflects ambient light. And in another moment, I could hear lapping waves. I knew exactly where I was. Thank you.
Okay. So I think some of you in the audience might have heard or read or know a little bit about the background of this collaboration. And if not, we can talk about that, or we can take any questions that you might have. Are there any questions?
There was a question on the real mic.
Okay.
Hi. I had the pleasure of reading an advanced reader's copy of your book in London. And
thank you.
I was so impressed with how seamlessly the writing was. And I was wondering how you were able to collaborate and make it sound like it's one voice instead of different writing styles.
Yeah, I think that part of the reason that works is the way we did it. Some people assume a collaboration means one person writes a chapter or so, then the other person edits it, fixes it up, and then vice versa. But we actually wrote every bit together, sometimes sitting side by side, at the computer, and or using Google Drive in different cities, same screen. So there really wasn't a chance for a different sound to come in. Whatever the voice is, it's that combination of two people writing for these characters at the same time. Yeah. Does that sound pretty accurate?
That sounds pretty accurate.
Okay.
The only other thing I can say is that, when you're writing, the voice comes from character. And as we were developing this character, her voice developed together for us at the same time.
Yes.
How heavily was it plotted beforehand? If you're collaborating, did you have the equivalent of screenwriters note cards or something like that, or did you figure it out much more?
Did we figure it out beforehand, the plotting, or what was that?
Or did it come much more organically, figuring it out as you're writing?
I think both.
But I mean, did you know the general outline?
Well, the thing is, we had some ideas, general overview, but if you're open for business when you're writing, you're surprised, and if you let it become at a certain point the story, you see ways you can veer in a direction you hadn't planned that's better than what you planned. Jill had more to do with the big picture, so I will let you say a little more.
Yeah, I mean, what we did is we would figure it out in 50-page increments. So if we got the first 50 pages going, I mean, it's not like when we started, we had about a 50-page idea, and then we had like a little light through the swamp at the end that we were heading towards. And if you do it in 50-page increments, it's never that overwhelming. So I would say
I disagree.
Really?
I thought it was overwhelming. Just say it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's all I have to say now.
Yes, hi.
So I've got a lot of good short stories that are wonderful.
Thank you.
And you were just saying it's overwhelming for the whole 15 pages. I know Mr. Lish told you that students were stories, it's okay to do short stories. I was wondering what it was like for you to write something a lot longer.
I missed just one part. That he said it was okay to do what with short stories?
Somewhere that Gordon Lish said it's totally okay to stick with short stories the rest of your life.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone can tell you that. It's fine. Nobody needs to write a novel. But you're saying, what was it like?
What was it like to write something a lot longer?
Well, that's where collaboration comes in, because we have complementary, sort of dovetailing areas of that we're confident about. So I just kept feeling confident about sentences. I write at the sentence level, in the short form and in the longer. And Jill's areas of expertise and confidence worked. I'm being very what? Hard time explaining this.
I mean, what would happen would be, for example, when I write on my own, okay, it takes me a long time to iron out a sentence the way I want it, okay? Amy has this ability on the first go to get the sentence, and that was a revelatory thing for me. On the other hand, I'm able to hold a whole book in my head, and she had enough confidence in me that if I said, don't worry, this is going to work, we just went forward. And it was almost like a complimentary, it's not like at the end I can't write a sentence and she can't write a plot. It was where we had our confidence. And that ended up making this process so much more fluid than when you write by yourself. And that was really, really interesting.
And another reason that the collaboration and the trust working together could work is that we've known each other for about 35 years. So there's something to be said for that. I'm just curious, has anyone in this audience collaborated with another person on any kind of project? Yeah, both of you who asked questions, what was your project?
Oh, mine? Oh, I was making songs and stuff.
Okay, songs, yeah.
Mine was a screenplay, but it was wildly successful.
I'm sorry. Tell us more. No, sorry. And maybe we'll say a word about Kathy.
All right, you guys start?
But, and again, we didn't just decide, gee, we've each written, X number of books by ourselves, and it's, we're ready for something new. We had a very, very close friend who lived 20-some years beyond a death sentence from breast cancer, and near the end of her life, she fell in love with somebody who courted her in a major way, and then deceived her quite gratuitously, we felt. And we went through this experience with her all the way, from early happy emails and, can't wait to see you emails to the terrible discovery of what he was up to. So she was a nonfiction writer, and a very, very good one, and she wanted to write a novel about this experience, about misplaced trust, the kind of experience that makes you doubt your own ability to judge character, which is a profound thing to happen. So she didn't live long enough to write it, but we had conversations with her about her desire to do this, to write about this experience. And well, you can take it.
And our total inspiration, and it's not giving anything away because it happens, is we kill this man off in the
Page 4.
Page 4. And that was enough to get us really rallied to finish the book.
I mean, we've said before, but our friend was really did feel like the third collaborator, and it was quite galvanizing, to think, okay, we're not just fooling around here. We're doing this for her. We're having fun while we're doing it, but we're doing it for her. We have a reason outside of just wanting to write something together to do this, and that was the driving force behind the thing, hoping she would get a kick out of it, and we know she'd get a huge kick out of Page 4. So, anybody else? Yes.
Do you find that process therapeutic to sort of avenge your friend?
I don't think
Therapy never comes in when you're writing. I mean, it's just...
It's good for diary keeping, not for a novel. It wasn't about being therapeutic. I don't think that's a reason. Something that you look for writing fiction. Did it feel good to, try to avenge what had been done to our friend? Sure, yeah. But Susan.
Dogs are such a big part of it. I didn't know you were also a dog person.
Yes, Jill is a big dog person.
Well, Jill is a little dog
Yeah, I
person.
have little dogs. They have to
Big
fit
little dog
They have to
person.
fit under the airplane seat. That's my criteria for my dogs.
And my dogs can be enormous because I drive everywhere. They have the car. Yes, hi.
How long did it take?
We did our first draft in about a year, and then took maybe another 6 months.
Yeah, about 6 more months.
When we got our wonderful editor's comments back, which were logical and smart, and with which we agreed completely. So yeah, we spent about, but even if you look at a year and a half total, more or less, that is so much faster than either of us has ever written a book by ourselves. I've probably averaged 7 years per slim volume of stories, and you're not far behind.
I'm 5 years for slim novels, so.
So that was another discovery, and I think part of the reason for that is not just that there are two of you at work on the same thing at the same time, but we really had no ego involvement. I mean, she could shut me down, I could shut her down anytime. And it was like, yeah, fine. But we also got that feedback instantly from another writer. You sometimes wait to show it to your selected readers. We didn't have that.
Also, you don't go through the same doubt. I mean, one of the things that slows a writer down is whatever you've written for the day then comes the afternoon where you sit there and begin to doubt it, and Then the next day you doubt it. Then three weeks later you think, you know, it's not that bad. And skipping that process I found to be really, really a real boost for speeding.
Yeah. Yes, hi.
What did you learn about structure writing a thriller that you did not know before when you were writing a thriller?
What did we learn about structure by writing a thriller? That's what you asked, pretty much? Yeah, well, neither of us had read, had written a thriller, but we've read many and are very keen on, you know, that form of writing, that genre. So, you know, I found myself rereading some that I particularly liked to just get a better sense of pacing, such as a wonderful psychological thriller by Linda LaPlante, who's responsible for Prime Suspect with Helen Mirren. She wrote a wonderful novel that Jill was the first one to tell me about called Cold Shoulder. And our book is not like Cold Shoulder, but I think it owes something to having now read that wonderful novel twice. I read a ton of French, you know, and many others. So I was helped along in terms of pacing, timing, by reading the thriller writers, contemporary, you know, ones that I think are really excellent.
And it was, you know, I've never written about murder or blood before. And, you know, if you really look at the history of literature, I mean, murder and blood are really exciting topics, and I'm a real fan of thrillers. So what it showed me is how to take those much larger issues and to turn them into stories, which I thought was a really interesting process. Because, you know, when you write about day-to-day life, there's not a lot of murder in it, unless you have a more interesting life than me.
Hi, yes.
Like, you find a balance between writing a fiction novel and also like covering the real events that like
Well, you know, that's, I mean, all fiction is, something is real that happened to start it off,
Well,
at least for me.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or you've heard it, or, I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question.
Well, I can say that the deception that, you know, was visited upon our friend remained the core of the novel, but virtually everything else about it is story making, is invented. You know, in the novel, this character is, as you heard, is studying criminology and such. Kathy never did that. Kathy didn't have dogs. She would have written about cats, you know. So really, it's just that much of the experience, but it's a huge experience, stayed the same. We don't know how she would have written the novel. She didn't get a chance, okay? But she wanted to really badly.
And she didn't want to write a memoir, remember. She wanted to write a novel, which was very freeing. I mean, if we were taking her actual story and then turning it, but she wanted to make up something using these elements too. So that part was quite liberating for us.
Yeah. Yes.
Did she discuss that with you? You talked about her as like almost as a third collaborator. Did you kind of discuss the rough outlines of this novel at all?
No.
No.
Really, the most specific thing that she had in mind for a large part of the story was something that for us took 2 paragraphs, a paragraph. And I can't say what it is because it would totally blow something, you know, you'll find out when reading. But no, it's really not.
Did you know you were going to write it?
No.
We didn't know, and we didn't think of it until after she had died, and you know, in missing her, we thought, oh, what a wonderful way to maybe keep her with us. You know, we'll write this, and it was something. You know, you want to do something for somebody who dies before they're ready to die, and this was what occurred to us. So, no, she didn't know. She didn't know. Yeah.
I know that you did a lot of research for the book, and I was wondering if there were any pieces of information that you found especially interesting that were either mentioned in the book or didn't quite make your cut.
Well, the one thing that I did read first, I loved the business with the, psychopaths have this biological thing in common, the low pulse rate. That just, that's the fun of research, is landing on something like that. We read a book called Pathological Altruism, which is a phenomenon that features in the book that's very, very interesting. You have a definition for it.
Pathological altruism is when you do so much good, okay, that it actually starts to destroy you, and sometimes destroy the people you're trying to do good for. So you become obsessed by being altruistic, and by doing so, you can destroy your own self, and sometimes you destroy the people you're trying to help. And that seemed really interesting. And
that was a cornerstone for this story. I'm sure there are others that I'm just not thinking of right now, but I'm all for research and fiction, and I just, in teaching, I'm always urging my students to just go learn something. I mean, learn from us, but also go find out how to do a job or something. Yeah. I think that's, one more question, yeah.
So I know from both of you in the book that eavesdropping and observation is really important. Eavesdropping and observation, which I probably have more familiar with my AD practices, but it's a lot of listening and a lot of space in your practice that enables that to transition to the page, really heard. How do you do that together so frequently? Because it does translate, even in what you read today, a lot of that seems like just pieced together from observation or eavesdropping in real life. How does that translate when there's two of you?
And there are two of us.
We would talk things out. I mean, before, we would get to a place and we would, comb through our memories, what we've read, until one of us landed upon an interesting way of entering. So, it was pretty much the same process, only you had another person to do it with.
For example, Jill was talking about one of her brothers who's a lawyer who has worked in Afghanistan, and she would mention an anecdote, and I pounce on it, let's use that, let's use that. It's really about, it can be as simple as the other person's excitement, and you gauge, you mention something and you gauge the excitement level of the other person to determine if it goes in or not. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for coming. And if anybody would like a book signed, we are happy to do that. Thanks.